So the Chiefs' 53-man roster and practice squad is pretty much set, with a pretty unexpected face returning today that did have some fans surprised. However, there's one player missing that has others pretty frustrated and confused, because that position group is not better with him gone, and honestly, I'm not sure if he's coming back. So I've got to talk about that, Rashee Rice's suspension becoming official today, and what that could mean for the team and more. But first, how about those? All right, there is a lot to get into today, including the fully built-out practice squad. For now, it's going to change, but it does also include some definite surprises. First, though, let's talk about Rashee Rice. He is officially suspended for 6 games, starting week 1 of the 2025 NFL season. Basically, the NFL was pushing for a 10 to 12 game suspension. Meanwhile, Rice and his camp were pushing something closer to 3 to 4 games. They couldn't find a middle ground, and therefore that hearing for September 30th with an independent arbitrator was scheduled. Reports always stated, though, that both sides could settle before that date, and even before the start of the season, a suspension could happen. Well, that is indeed what happened today. They ended up settling on 6 games, which officially went into effect this afternoon. I understand why Rice and his camp pushed back against 10 to 12 games. That is Deshaun Watson and Justin Tucker territory. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, the NFL sent out an official statement today saying that Rice is suspended without pay for the first 6 games of the season for violations of the NFL's personal conduct policy, and this begins immediately. He will be eligible for reinstatement on Monday, October 13th, which is the day after the Chiefs play the Lions during their Week 6 matchup. So that means Rice can't practice with the team or attend games with the team during that time. Can't even be there as a spectator, to be clear with you. After 3 games, though, he can return to the facility and start getting ramped up and ready to return for the Week 7 matchup against the Raiders. So with Rice out the first 6 weeks, that means the Chiefs are going to be without him, obviously, for the season opener against the Chargers next week in Brazil. Then the Week 2 matchup against the Eagles, Week 3 against the Giants, Ravens are Week 4, Jags Week 5, and then Lions are Week 6. I would say 4 of those 6, Chargers, Eagles, Ravens, Lions, are pretty difficult opponents, and Rice will definitely be missed. But make no mistake here, the Chiefs won 12 of the next 14 regular season games without Rice after he got injured during that game against the Chargers after Christian Fulton, of all people, picked Mahomes off. And it was really 12 of 13 games ended up in W's because the starters rested Week 18 against the Broncos. So they won without Rice, but also without, for most of these games at least, their wide receiver 2 in Hollywood Brown, running back 1, Isaiah Pacheco. Kareem Hunt was signed off the couch and tried his best during that time. They also had no cornerback 2 in Jalen Watson, and of course, no left tackle. All that to say, the Chiefs can manage life without Rice, even though I can't wait for him to return, as he will only help take the offense to new heights. Okay, cheesy joke, but I'm just glad that the suspension is finally happening, and we now know when and can get this all behind us after 18 months of talking about it. The Chiefs have been preparing for the possibility of Rice's suspension for quite some time now. Matt Nagy said that in a presser a couple weeks ago, and so they will be as prepared as they possibly can be without Rice on the field. This also makes a bit more sense as to why the Chiefs had 8 wide receivers on their initial 53-man roster. They knew the suspension was coming, so the simple move of Rice to the reserve suspended list brings them back down to 7 wide receivers, and then I think Robert Tonyan ends up back on the 53-man roster. More on that a bit later, though, because we do got to break down the entire practice squad and all that, but I do want to give an optimistic look at Rice being suspended now and why I like that better than it happening mid-season. Rice is only missing 1 AFC West division matchup out of their 6. Those are the most important games for the Chiefs. Obviously, if you win your division, you make the playoffs, and so it is absolutely pivotal to be firing on all cylinders for both games against the Raiders, Chargers, and Broncos. But yeah, he's going to miss 1 against the Chargers, but then be available for both against the Raiders as well as both against the Broncos. That's going to be massive for the Chiefs, critical, and definitely works in the Chiefs' favor. On top of that, Rice can stay healthy and in shape for his Week 7 return and use the back half of the season to get completely back in sync, back in rhythm with Mahomes as they gear up for the playoffs. Ultimately, I would of course prefer a suspension didn't happen, but that would also mean Rice never made those poor choices, wrecked the car, fled the scene. you have to face the consequences of your actions, and he had to plead guilty to 2 third-degree felony charges, so the suspension has to be here. I am not the guy saying Rice should not be suspended. He absolutely should. I just wish none of this happened in the first place. Anyway, with all that being said, let me know your thoughts on the 6-game suspension in the comments down below, and how you are feeling about it currently. You think the team's going to be okay? Where are you at with it all at this point in time? Next up, of all the players the Chiefs waived yesterday, you can see them all on the screen here to get their roster down from 90 to 53. We saw only 2 of these guys get claimed by another team on the waiver wire, with both of them heading to New York to become a member of the Jets. Those players were linebacker Cam Jones and offensive tackle Esa Pole. I had Cam Jones making the roster as linebacker 6, but he got surpassed by the UDFA Cooper McDonald. Happy for him. From there, I was obviously hoping, though, that Cam Jones could end up signing with the Chiefs practice squad, but nope. He's gone, as is the fan favorite offensive tackle Esa Pole. Some thought the team should have kept Pole over Wanye, knowing that once the Chiefs waived him, he would probably be gone. Well, the coaching staff have shown they were higher on Wanye than Pole throughout camp and preseason, and so Wanye stays on the 53 as one of the 9 linemen, though I'm sure the team were at least hopeful Pole would be able to land on the practice squad. The dream is over, though, as both of these guys, talking about Cam Jones and Esa Pole, are now with the New York Jets. The former Jet, Derek Nottie, spoke to the media today and told them he was surprised when the GM over there told him that he was getting traded to the Chiefs. He did not expect it, but was fine with the decision, of course, to come back to the team that drafted him in 2018 and he's spent his entire career with so far. When asked why he didn't actually sign back with the Chiefs during the offseason, though, Nottie said it was the team that wanted to go in a different direction. He was saddened by that, but wasn't mad or anything because they gave him a great opportunity by drafting him in the first place, and business is business, so he sought out other opportunities in free agency, and the Jets were the ones to give him the chance. It all came full circle, though, as he's now back with the Chiefs anyway. So while Nottie is here, many fans, including myself, are pretty confused. Some are actually pissed off to not see defensive tackle Mike Pennel on the roster or on the practice squad. It could still happen, to be clear, but it doesn't appear that's the way things are trending. Sam McDowell of the KC Star said he's not expecting Pennel back on the Chiefs' initial practice squad group, and I've heard rumblings from 2 different sources now that Pennel wasn't happy with how things ended. The exact details as to what the issue was, I'm not 100% sure right now, but yeah, it's all a bit confusing because everyone projected Pennel to be on the 53-man roster, or at least upon being released yesterday, signing to the practice squad, as he didn't have to clear waivers as a vested veteran. Maybe that'll change here soon, but as of right now, the Chiefs practice squad has been announced, and Mike Pennel is not there. It's a very odd ordeal because they treated Pennel as the starter on the depth chart all offseason long, all these preseason games, yet let Nottie walk in free agency and sign with the Jets. Well, then they decided to trade for Nottie just before the start of the season, and now the presumed-to-be starter this entire time to basically everybody is now gone with the wind. I don't get it. Most of you don't get it, and it's definitely rubbed some fans the wrong way. Ultimately, it takes 2 sides to tango, and maybe the Chiefs thought they could execute a certain plan, and Pennel didn't want to play ball. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow because I felt like Pennel had outplayed Nottie, and that's why the team decided to go in a different direction, i.e. letting Nottie walk and keeping Pennel around. Let me know your thoughts on that one and if you agree with me here, because it seems like the majority of Chiefs Kingdom were very confused about this entire process. From here, I want to get into some injury updates from today's practice, as well as the fully announced practice squad. It's not completely full, but it's very close. I will say, though, as a reminder first, let's look at what a practice squad is and how it's kind of comprised. It can be made up of 17 players. That's 16 plus 1 international pathway player every week during the season. Teams can protect 4 players, so they can't be poached by another team and signed to their active roster. They can also promote 2 of those players each week to the active roster for game day. It's basically an elevation, and then they return to the practice squad after that. You can do that twice, but if you do it a 3rd time, said player has to actually be signed to the 53-man roster, aka the active roster. Now, as far as what types of players can make up the 16 available spots, 17 with the international pathway player, a team can have up to a total of 10 players that either do not have an accrued season, i.e. a rookie, or players that were on the active roster for fewer than 9 regular season games during their only accrued seasons. From there, a team can have up to 4 players with no more than 2 accrued seasons and up to 6 vested veterans, played with no limitations at all. I know that was a lot, but it's a bit of a strategic mess is why I brought this up and why a lot of young guys make up teams' practice squads. With all that being said, here's the Chiefs practice squad as it stands today and my thoughts around it. For starters, we've got Chris Oladokun back. Perfect. I wanted him on the practice squad. Think he deserves to be there. If injuries happen to hit the QB room, that would not be ideal, but he would be a good one to elevate and have up there and around. He's been in the system for quite a long time. And then, no, this is not a typo. The Chiefs brought back running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. This is kind of like the Mike Edwards signing or Deion Bush last year. And yes, Mike Edwards is on the practice squad, but both Mike Edwards, safety Mike Edwards, and running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they know the system, they've been around, and they can play as early as week 1 if they need to, okay? So I know there were some other running backs available. Damian Martinez was a guy. He ended up signing to the Seahawks practice squad. There were other options available. For whatever reason, the Chiefs either didn't pursue those options or they weren't interested enough looking at the Chiefs' running back room to sign even to their practice squad. So the Chiefs have Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Carson Steele. Honestly, Clyde is fine, and think of what he can provide as far as a mentor in that room. He's going to be the veteran in that room and maybe could even help out Brashard Smith, who is very new to the running back position. Yes, he did not live up to his first-round draft stock and all that. I get it, but for the practice squad, fine with it. Honestly, there was a couple guys released yesterday, former Chiefs, MVS, and McCole Hardman, I thought might find their way onto the practice squad, but they did not. And with the Chiefs keeping 8 receivers, they don't have a lot of receivers on the practice squad right now, but Hal Presley and Jimmy Holiday made it because Jason Brownlee, Tyquan Thornton, Nico Remigio are all on the active roster right now, with the other 5 being, of course, Rice, Worthy, Hollywood, Royals, and Juju, but Rice is now on the reserve suspended list, so they're going to have 7 wide receivers, and we should see Robert Tonyan, at least that's what the thought is, the belief is, we should see Robert Tonyan added to the 53-man roster here sooner rather than later. Now, on the subject of the wide receivers, there were 3 players that didn't practice today, with one of those 3 being wide receiver Jalen Royals. The thought was yesterday that Royals could be a potential IR candidate, and I guess you can't rule it out. He could miss the first 4 weeks of the regular season, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest said, barring any setback, he could be ready to go week 1. And without Rice, you're really going to need these guys firing on all cylinders out there. The other 2 that didn't practice is linebacker Jack Cochran with the knee and Omar Norman Lott with the ankle. This is the same as yesterday. So all 3 of these guys haven't practiced either day. And with that, let's move on here because we have 2 tight ends on the practice squad, Trey Watson and Robert Tonyan. Again, Robert Tonyan should be elevated or signed to the 53-man roster here sooner rather than later. The international pathway player is offensive tackle Jason Chu-Godric. No surprises there. Then you have CJ Hansen. I do like that as well. You have 3 defensive tackles right now, Keziah Izzard, Marlon Tuipulotu, and Broderick Martin. Martin is a new addition. He was a 3rd-round pick by the Lions in the 2023 NFL Draft, appearing in 3 games that year. He began the 2024 season on IR, though, was activated on November 20th and then waived, and now he is a Kansas City Chief. Not a lot of experience, not a lot to take away from this other than he's a massive run stuffer and potentially a guy that could work into the Mike Pennel role, but Mike Pennel is nowhere to be seen. It's going to take Broderick some time to get brought up to speed, and so Derek Nottie is going to kind of have to hold it down. Outside of that, you've got linebacker Cole Christensen, cornerbacks Melvin Smith Jr. and Kevin Knowles, and safety Mike Edwards, as I said before. Essentially, every single vested veteran that the Chiefs released yesterday, aside from Mike Pennel, signed to the practice squad. And you might see, other than Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Broderick Martin, nobody else is new on here from the Chiefs' 90-man roster to the practice squad because the Chiefs had no successful waiver claims. No idea who they were actually interested in and who they potentially put a claim in for, but they weren't successful because the Chiefs were 31st out of 32 teams on the waiver wire. I also want to add this. Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Broderick Martin aren't official yet. So if you look at any of the practice squad reports from the Chiefs website or anywhere else, it's not going to have them on there. I think they still need to pass their physical, and we will most likely see them on the roster tomorrow. But let me know what you think about the Chiefs practice squad so far. Yes, they were calling around for a running back. I'm sure some people aren't thrilled about having CEH back on the roster, but again, he could play this week, next week, He knows the system. It would take him a little while to get up to speed, but CEH can do a little bit of everything, even though he wouldn't be the first priority. I would have liked to see them get somebody else in there, and I still believe Elijah Mitchell is kind of on the hot seat and could be playing for his job. We will see what happens there, but I kind of jumped around the practice squad as I gave my thoughts. So here's the list in its entirety. Everybody that will, in theory, be there by tomorrow once Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Broderick Martin pass their physicals and officially sign. But it's Chris Oladokun, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Carson Steele, Hal Presley, Jimmy Holiday, Trey Watson, Robert Tonyan, Jason Chu-Godric as the one international pathway player, offensive lineman CJ Hansen. You've got 3 defensive tackles, Kosiah Izzard, Marlon Tuipulotu, and Broderick Martin, linebacker Cole Christensen, and cornerbacks Melvin Smith Jr., Kevin Knowles, and last but not least, safety Mike Edwards. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments down below. Where do you stand on the whole Mike Pennell situation? How are you feeling about the practice squad and the initial 53-man roster? Let me know either way. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?